I like the concept of, if the floor outside is a smart floor, and it can recognize a person by its gait, should you be able to know that and opt out?
Interesting.
There's a lot of smart devices around us, and we may be unaware. So what's the responsibility of the device to the human to say, I'm intruding on your life? Is that okay? I'm going to give you this value in return. Is that a good trade?
Welcome to Coffee with Mr. IoT. My name is Robert Schmidt, Deloitte's Chief Futurist. And today, my guest on the show is Steve Caudill, the agricultural platform lead for CNHI. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Who is CNHI?
Okay. CNH Industrial makes capital goods. And in my space, that's agricultural goods. We make the Case, New Holland, and Steyr brand of tractors and agricultural equipment, but CNH also makes construction equipment, powertrains, and commercial vehicles.
I have to tell you, when you said Steyr, I was like all excited. It's an Austrian company originally.
Yes,
and I remember when I was a kid, that was like the biggest thing ever. Can I sit on a truck and drive a tractor from Steyr?
You bet. You bet.
It's been really funny to think back to those days. So you specifically work in the agricultural sector. So have you actually driven a Steyr tractor?
I have not driven a Steyr, no.
A Case New Holland?
Yes.
Is that what testing for you is like? You create products and then you drive around in tractors?
Driving around in a tractor? Yeah, actually, many of the software development folks who work on our teams aren't from an agricultural background. So at the office out in Burridge, where I do my work, we have a test track, and our product validation team for our on-vehicle and off-vehicle software components tests out things before it goes out to the field. So our guys love to get qualified on the tractor and drive around with the product validation team and come back and say, I was on the tractor, it was so awesome. I mean, we do make really fun equipment. So we don't get to, dig up the dirt and, harvest some corn and those kinds of things. You have to go out somewhere to do that. But you can drive around in a circle and put it on autopilot and be in these enormous and really cool machines.
So I want you to talk to me about what these enormous cool machines do, because I don't think people like me who go to the store to buy milk and to buy product really appreciate what actually goes into these machines. They're really sophisticated. I mean, even the fact that there is an agricultural platform lead like you is amazing. Tell us what you do in the sort of like on these tractors. What do they have?
Yeah,
How do they work?
So tractors, autonomous vehicles are all the rage, but tractors have been nearly autonomous for many years. The ability to plant your seeds at sub-inch precision is something that's very important to
Sub-inch.
Very important to growers. Yeah, really, really tiny, very accurate. Because in a field you may have more than one kind of seed, depending upon the lay of the land and the composition of the soil and how much water a portion gets. So there's very precise prescriptions about how to do various operations. Planting being one of them, but tillage and a variety of other options. And a grower has a whole ecosystem of folks that help them determine what should they do and what should they plant and how to make that happen. And those folks create a prescription of what to do in this field. And then the tractors, basically an operator just lines the tractor up with the beginning of the prescription, and it takes care of the rest and actually makes happen exactly what was asked for.
So, if I'm hearing this right, you said almost autonomous. And I mean, it makes sense, right? There's no other traffic in general on a field, right? So it's simpler in the way of driving, but you sort of like put it in, you go and tell it what to do, and then
you
it drives.
take your hands off the wheel and it does the rest. Including complicated things like I get to the end of a row and I have to turn around and I have to not hit the fence and I have to not break the implement that I have and it has to land in the right spot, and then it has to go continue doing
Yeah,
its
because
thing.
it's sub-inch, right? So it's
Right.
got to really be right.
Very, very precise. Lots of complicated technology goes under the tractor to make that happen. So that part of tractor and autonomy, my counterparts at CNH work on, that make the electronics and the software for the vehicle. But once you have a vehicle that has that kind of control, you also want to gather the information about, well, did I actually do what I said I was going to do? What really happened? Did I hit a bump? Did I tilt it a certain way? Did the seeds not flow correctly? What was the outcome? And so once you have that outcome, you want to transmit that outcome to applications where you can then evaluate, do I need to do something special? Should I go back? What do I have to do? So suddenly now you want your tractor to be connected. Otherwise, you have to drive out there and get a USB stick and take it back to your old computer. And it was a whole bunch of very manual processes in the early days of this kind of agriculture that meant it was difficult to deal with your data. And so now what my team works on is the connected side of the vehicle to say, okay, it's got all this great stuff and it does work, and then we want to get that work off the vehicle and into the cloud and do useful things with it. One of the most important things that our growers want to do is share that data with their ecosystem. So, okay, I had the guy that made the prescription for my seeding. Well, now he needs to find out how it went so that he can give me advice on, are we good, what do we think our yield's going to be, and to the folks who are dealing with my pesticides or with my watering plan, say, all right, well, this is what you've got to do now that you've done this based on current weather and all kind of other things. So they need to share this with a variety of folks who help them manage their farm. In addition, if you've got any decent sized farm, you're probably not operating all the equipment yourself. So while that equipment is out being operated by somebody, you want to know what's going on. Are they close to the end of the field? Do I have time to do another one? Should I give them some instructions? Are they following the plan, or are they took it off of autopilot and now they're driving it themselves, which means I'm not going to get a consistent process. So you want to watch what's happening, and that means a connected vehicle needs to have some form of fleet operation kind of view of things. In addition, these are complicated machines, lots can go wrong, and they operate in very harsh environments. So you're in the dirt, you're in the heat, you're in the rain, and something happens and you start getting signals onto your kind of operations panel to say, hey, we've got a problem with one of the lift controllers, or with what's happening with our implement, or something that's going on in the cab. And so then you can decide to take action on that and actually help your operator, many of whom are not as well trained as you'd like, or transient in, okay, I'm here for the season and then I'm using somebody else's equipment some other time. So not only is your agronomic data important to have and to share and to use, but also the machine data is very important, because you get one shot at many of these things and you really want to do it right. Because at the end of the day, all of this stuff adds up to yield, and that's how you make or break your farm, and farms tend to be very close to the edge. So a little bit of difference in yield can make a really important difference in the life of a grower.
So you have vehicles that are almost autonomous. They drive themselves to a certain point and they make sure it's seated right. You have vehicles that actually gather data. I'm assuming they do some edge processing. They do some processing right there on the tractor, right?
That's right.
And then a set of data gets sent up to the cloud, where you then do more analytics and
Right.
processing. And then you also help the operator, so that allows you to have operators drive that don't have 40 years experience when the ground changes, because I'm assuming this is sort of like, this is the benefit of having a really, really experienced farmer with this equipment. They'd know if it gets wet, I need to do this. In your case, the equipment actually supports that and
Right.
guides you in these ways around that.
So in addition to doing that yourself, you also have a network of folks that help you with the equipment. So if you buy a new tractor, you've used one for 5 years and you're very familiar with that, but now you want to buy a new one. Okay, it's going to operate slightly differently. It has new features, it has new sensors and new technology. So the first time you run it through a season, well, you're not that familiar with it either. So you can call your dealer for support. You can call some other parts of the ecosystem for support. And then when you've got a connected vehicle, that lets you give them access to information, and that lets them help you do a good job. So if you get halfway through some operation and it doesn't seem to be going right, you can call up your dealer. They can connect into your vehicle. They can make adjustments and changes. They can look at your screen and just help you pick this option. Okay, set it up that way. No, it looks right. Okay, do it some more, and actually, interact with you while you're using a new piece of equipment. A whole variety of interesting things about what does it take to actually execute in the field, and it's complicated.
I have like these really fundamental questions for you. It's like, that sounds like a really sophisticated equipment.
Yes, it is.
Do I need to learn? How do you give this to some operators? Is there special training? Is this very natural?
Well,
I remember the tractor I'm thinking of had a wheel, had 3 pedals, and I had problems with the clutch. That's how I thought of my tractor when I was a kid.
Right.
This is not what you're telling me about the new tractors.
It's a little more complicated. But
it doesn't probably have a clutch anymore, which is great. But I mean, it has all these other things now.
The basic thing that a tractor does is not so different than it used to do. It just does it at a much finer degree of fidelity, and you've got a bunch of tools that can make it interesting. So, for example, the tractor that we're just beginning to sell now, that will be rolling out this month and available to customers later this year, has got 360-degree cameras. And it was interesting, one of our executives was out driving a prototype and was playing with the cameras and noticed that he was pulling a tillage device and a big rock had got stuck in the tiller, and he was starting to get this mound of dirt behind him. So, he stopped and fixed the problem, and then was very embarrassed to say, an experienced person, and I shouldn't be dragging a mound of dirt behind me, but he couldn't see it otherwise. So that's the same thing. Even an experienced grower needs to know, how do I operate these things that help me, even though the basic tractor operation is not that different? There's a lot of tools that just help me do a better job. And yes, they need training from their dealers. We've got videos and things and instruction manuals, what have you, that go with it.
Do you see resistance by users to use all that technology?
It varies. It's interesting. I was at the one of the biggest shows in the world, the Farm Progress Show, that happens kind of August, September timeframe every year, and we had a demonstration seat and armrest with the little controllers and the display on it from our new tractor sitting out there. And I was talking to one of the guys who was selling some of our connected products, and probably 10, 12-year-old boy comes up, sits down in the seat, and said, can I operate it? Can I touch it? And the guy's like, yeah, go ahead. That's what it's for. And in 2 minutes, he was doing stuff that made perfect sense, and tractor was operating and things were going, and I'm like, to me, it looked completely incomprehensible. But apparently, if you do some things in tractors, they've progressed little by little over the years, and those operations are reasonably well understood. So, even a young guy could get in there that wasn't afraid of the technology, but didn't know it either, and very quickly figure it out. So clearly it's not completely unintuitive, but at my age and older, many of the farm owners, particularly of family farms, are in their 60s and upwards. And so they're going to be a little less, technology eager to jump into the new kind of tech stuff. But if you want to have an operational, profitable farm, this is the kind of equipment you need to run.
I laugh because I think there's this interesting dilemma of, we have the young generation who grew up with iPads and they're just used to tapping, and if you can't tap, it's like, what's going on? Right. And then we have a generation that isn't used to anything like this, and what we do is we make the app look like the analog version of it, and for people like you, tapping is like, what are you doing? This makes no sense. Right. So when do you switch over? It's a really interesting UX dilemma that you have, right? And you must have that a lot.
Yeah, and there's a whole research team and set of UX designers that work on tractor design of the cab, of the seat, of the armrest, of the joystick, of the display, how things work. A lot of work goes into making that right. And then we have the same problem on the off-vehicle side, in that we want people to be able to easily visualize their information, find their information. There's a lot. There's a lot of layers of things that happen in a field. Some fleets are quite large. Some of our customers have several hundred vehicles. And all right, I need to find the right tractor. I got to get to it quickly. I have to know where it is. I have to decide what I want to do with it. If I want to, I need to do a software update on 3 vehicles. I have to find them, make sure it gets the right stuff, connect up to technicians so he can do it. And navigating, even though, it might be easy if you've got 2 vehicles. navigating an entire fleet can be quite
That's a
difficult.
different challenge.
No, it's any kind of working with data in an operational way. You've got to be able to make quick decisions and correct decisions.
So I listen to you, and what occurs to me is that tractors are smarter than most cars out there. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, in a lot of ways.
Why is
In a
that?
lot of ways. Our cab on our new tractor is very sophisticated. It's got a car feel. It's, dressed out nicely. It's got a sound system. It's got all these
but I mean,
cameras.
from a technology underneath it, it's way more advanced than
Right.
most cars sold today. Well, maybe not today, but a few years ago.
Right.
Why is that?
It's what you need to get the level of yield you want from your field. Right. Your machinery has got to have that level.
So the
And
yield pays for it. It's
yield
really
pays for
literally you get the extra output because you use the extra technology
Right.
on the tractor.
Right. That's really what it comes down to. And if you're not taking advantage of the technology and just having a heavy thing that pulls equipment, okay, well you get what you pay for. And if you can tolerate the lower precision of output, well, you don't need all that technology. But most growers, this season was a good example in North America. It was very wet. And so, some farms didn't get planted at all. And those farms that did needed to be in a very short time frame, very precise, special conditions. It's got to work exactly right because I have today, and that's all I have. And in many cases, just
So people lost a whole year because they
Because-
didn't have the equipment to seed.
right.
Wow.
So there's so many factors that play into it. When it's time to go, you need to go really, really well. When it's time to harvest and the grain is optimal or whatever you're working with is okay, now's the time. It's a matter of days and sometimes hours in when's really the best time to make something happen. So it has to go fast, it has to go right, and that requires that level of complexity in the technology to make that happen. In addition, you're sitting in that vehicle for 12 hours. It needs to be comfortable because you don't want to get tired and then make mistakes with your entire livelihood while you're harvesting your corn.
How far away are we from them really driving on their own?
Well, we have a concept vehicle that does that, that we actually launched a couple of years ago, and have been gathering customer input on how would you really use this, right? What's the right application of a completely driverless version of something? Should it be out on its own doing tillage and nobody watches? Should it be a partner so that you've got maybe one vehicle with an operator and a couple of autonomous vehicles moving carts or doing the after operation, doing a harvest and they're doing tillage? So figuring out, okay, what's the right application so that we can put the right technology into that so that we could make one thing that solves all the world's problems, but we never quite get finished with building that. So we'd like to get things to market that people can use, and so a lot of what is happening with the concept vehicle is doing some practice and learning with our customers. Okay, what's the right application of fully autonomous technology?
If I'd go out today and start counting, I guess I'm just gonna call it smart equipment. And I know there's generational changes, and it started a little bit to now it's a lot. But it's sort of like when you would consider them smart, how many of them, how many percentage-wise, are we talking that 20% of them are smart, half of them, 2%? What do you think?
I don't really know. The smartness in tractors began many years ago. So most of the large tractors that are doing important operations have been precision operated vehicles for a long time. How many does a grower need to have on his particular farm, right? If what you're doing is lifting bales of hay and putting them into storage or pulling a cart, okay, you don't need that level of technology.
Point,
so
yeah.
there's a mix of these kinds of things depending upon what you're doing. And I don't personally have specific statistics on how much of this, but every year it's more and more and more. As even the older stuff has been pretty smart. So as your fleet ages and you buy new things and maybe move some things down to other operations, they still have quite a bit of intelligence built into the vehicle and the equipment.
Interesting. So I want to switch from looking from back in today to looking to tomorrow or further out. based on what you'd like to do, what are you missing? What are the things that aren't quite there yet in terms of either technology or change, or I don't know, there's probably a multitude of things. I'm curious.
That's a good question. So what we're doing is the stuff I'd actually like to do. So in our most recent release of Tractor, we have some really nice remote services capabilities. One of the problems a dealer faces is that he may have a 300-mile radius around his dealership where he services equipment. So it's a lot of driving to get to somebody, and if you get there and you don't have the right stuff, or if you needed to do something small that you could have done electronically, you've slowed down the grower's operation, you've a lot of expense for you. And so we've added to the vehicle information and the stuff that we can do from the cloud to say, okay, I can peer into your display and see what's going on and give you tips and hints and tell you what to punch. I can actually connect my service tool that you'd normally bring it into a bay and plug in with a cable. Okay, well now I can do most of those things over the air. So I can diagnose what's going on, I can determine what the right part is, I can update your software on various components. So a bunch of those service tasks that would have created a lot of downtime, we can now handle. So we want to continue to do those kind of things. Okay, what's the next thing that I can do to make it easier for you to handle some of your service? Or, okay, now not only can I see your display, but I can control your display, which has a lot of safety issues, if you're not there and you can't see the area. So, how do we give the dealer a view from the cameras, perhaps? And, actually control over stopping the vehicle and these kinds of things in order to be able to say, all right, now it's safe for somebody to be able to say, okay, change this parameter, do this thing, here, I'm going to click it for you. Okay, now you go.
Is that typically the dealer actually, or is it actually someone who's really deep into how to see it right? Or how, it's almost like, I wonder if you need someone that supports the operator who really knows how to operate best on the field rather than how to sell an equipment.
Right, so the dealers have technicians who are familiar with this.
That makes sense.
One of the nice things about having this level of technology in the vehicles for many years is that we built up some skills. There's a variety of dealers. Some have these and some don't. But a good dealer with a large operation has their own people. And then if you operate a 400 vehicle fleet, you have your own people internally to help make those kind of things happen.
Yeah, that's true too.
So there's folks out there, and some dealers offer like tuning services to say, listen, if you sign up for this service, before you go into the field, we'll help you tune it right based on the weather conditions or the soil conditions or the height of your corn, or to make sure everything's just right before you get started. And we'll help monitor you while you're going along. So depending upon the sophistication of the dealer, they're offering various services to help the grower optimize what they have. So
it's like the dealer has an Apple Genius bar.
Yeah, exactly. It's the agronomic equivalent of the Genius bar.
So I want to switch for our closing. I've looked at your background. You've done multiple startups in the IoT space. Now you work for CNH. What does your personal life look like? How connected are you? What do you do? What's your house like? I can just imagine your house being this wonderland of connected devices, but maybe it's not. I don't know. Some people go both ways.
My wife is a little annoyed that she has to talk to the lights because I haven't quite gotten around to putting in the switches that you can do things manually, and she likes to touch something, and so she has to tell the lamp to turn off.
Your Philips Hue lamps are really, really annoying at that thing, right? Because there's no real switches for that.
Yeah, some of them can be. So, and there's always ways around those kind of things. Yeah. So yeah, I have a reasonably, connected home, and enjoy that. But it's more to play with than to, get strong value from. Because I've done a number of startups and things, and I like to play with the technology a bit. Some of it has just been, okay, let's get a Raspberry Pi and hook it to something and see what I can make it do.
What would be the cool thing you'd show me at your house if I'd come by?
Well, when we want to shut everything off that's connected, because not everything's connected, but when we want to shut off things that are connected, we could just say, Alexa, good night, which then goes to a, if this then that script that, turns off all the appropriate things, and okay, there we go. Now the house is dark, or appropriately, the right things are done in the right way.
That's cool.
But yeah, people are usually, when I say, Alexa, turn on the lamp, they're like, wow, that was really cool. So actually, that was pretty easy to make happen. That didn't. I got some other things that are not nearly as cool that were way harder to do. So yeah, the technology's moved ahead, and my interest has been in the technology social interaction. I like the concept of if the floor outside is a smart floor, and it can recognize a person by its gait, should you be able to know that and opt out?
Interesting.
There's a lot of smart devices around us, and we may be unaware. So what's the responsibility of the device to the human to say, I'm intruding on your life? Is that okay? I'm going to give you this value in return. Is that a good trade? And we're not quite to where the devices are doing that for us, but it's similar to the tractors that we make. Okay, I am a complicated tractor. Is that a good trade for what you're going to get for using the complicated tractor? And if you use it well, we think yes. But that's a decision the human has to make. And so many of the kind of smart home components and other things that are in our buildings and cars and spaces around us, they're not really giving us the option.
It was I was smiling about your example of your wife being annoyed. At my house, I speak to my lights too. I rarely actually forget what a light switch for it is, and unfortunately the API was broken down between my voice recognition software and my hub that controls it. It was literally broken for 3 or 4 days. And it was like, turn off all lights. Oh, it didn't happen. Oh, hang on. And it was pretty funny. So we get pretty used to our technology over time, and then
Right.
suddenly it becomes something we are very used to. I have to tell you, it's one of those things, you work in an area where you actually make an impact to what we eat, how much we get, and I thank you for that, and thanks for being on the show. It was
My pleasure.
a pleasure learning about agriculture more and how it gets smarter. And with that, we've come to the end of another coffee chat. Thank you for watching. If you missed any of today's show, please check out our playlist on YouTube. You can see today's shows and any previous shows. And with that, I'm gonna say goodbye.